Hello, everybody. Welcome today to our Evolve electrical updates and Q&A webinar. Joining us on the call today, we have Amber Zinke, one of our sales engineers. We have Adam Heon, product manager, as well as another product manager new to Evolve, Jason Earl. We have Andrew Somerville, outbound product manager, as well as Alex Siebert, customer success specialist. So right at the top here, I'm going to launch a quick poll for everybody. So it's going to ask, what feature would you most like to see next from Evolve? So if you get a chance during the webinar, go ahead and answer that for us. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, make sure you stay up to date with all the latest updates and releases by connecting with us on social media. And with that, we are going to pass it over to Alex Siebert, our customer success specialist.
Awesome. Thanks, Marina. All right, I'm going to share my screen here real quick. So the thing that I'm going to go over today for everyone is within Foresight. So one of the biggest questions we're getting when it comes to portal support is how to delete a license within the portal. A lot of people are deleting users as opposed to deleting the actual license or entitlement. So I just kind of wanted to walk everyone through that and make sure that that workflow was crystal for everyone. So that way you can move licenses around as needed. So this is going to be what you're going to see within the Foresight portal. The company members screen is where you do most of your license management, if not all of it. So I'm going to search over here. I'm going to search for my account. So the best way to see which licenses are assigned to which users is to go over here to this ID column. And you're going to go down to the user that you want to see which licenses are assigned. So for that, that's going to be me. I'm going to click on this little drop down right here, and it's going to show the licenses that are attached to my user. So to delete that, as I'm sure you can see, as soon as I hover over the license that I want to delete, you're going to see a little trash can that appears here. So all you need to do is click that, and that's going to put that right back into your license pool. So you'll see that success sign that popped up at the bottom of the screen to let me know that that license was indeed removed from the user. And then if you want to add that again, all you would need to do is click on the box for the user that you want to add that to. You're going to add a license, and then you're going to click on projects and bundles, and you're going to select the license that you want to assign. You want to make sure you click off within this screen right here within the add licenses screen, because sometimes if you click on the off the window to get rid of that, sometimes it completely shuts down and doesn't add that license, even though it looks like it might have. But I'm going to click that assign here, and then just double check again one more time to go over here to this ID column, go down to the drop down and see that that license has indeed been placed. So the confusing part for people trying to remove licenses is sometimes they'll come over here to these three dots and click on this, and then they think that by deleting the actual user that deletes the license. That is not the case. So that license is actually going to stick with that user. And if you wanted to, you could look at deleted users, go through and delete the license exactly like I showed you. However, for that, like say the user wants to come back and start using Evolve more, or needs to use Evolve for a certain project, then you have to go through the whole invite user. They would have to set up their account, and then you would have to assign that license to them. So just wanted to make sure that everyone could skip all those steps and go right to deleting that license for reassignment. If you guys do have any questions, or you do that workflow and you get like an error or something doesn't look right, please feel free to reach out to me and I will help you through it. Awesome. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to kick it over to Adam to go over some of the stuff within the actual program.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. I'm going to share my screen here. So what I'm going to go through, I'll probably cover a bunch of 6.2 updates that will be coming out. We did push this out for beta just to those who kind of responded back to us. and wanted to participate in that. So I'll go through kind of a few that I think stand out. But where I'm going to start with is the sample model that we provide. Let me actually jump back into Foresight here, just so everybody knows. When you are in your admin module, so if you're in admin and you go to your company properties, there's going to be a download link for sample files. It's just a zip folder, contains a model and a bunch of configs. So I'll be pushing an update to that pretty closely with the release of 6.2, maybe slightly before or slightly after. But the purpose of the model is to provide a little bit of everything like configured with different options, some sync rules, color rules, what have you, just as examples in how they would be used, or something to go by so you can kind of see them work in action and then tweak them and kind of go from there. So one of the shortcomings of the current sample file that I noticed was there's really nothing fully completed. So there were no active spools, there were no packages. Not all the locations were, or the locations weren't really activated yet. So it kind of required you to go through and do some other features in order to actually get full use of, say, reports or some data profiles, things like that. So with this model, we kind of tried to expand it a little bit more, add some spools, packages, whatnot, just to broaden out the amount of content that's actually in here. So this model here is the updated model. Still tweaking a little bit because we're adjusting our reports. But as you can see, it's just kind of doubled in size, and I got some spools and things. So I'm going to go over some of that in here. One of the things I'm going to start with, I'm just going to look at my list here, is the use of data profiles within find elements. So I think last time that I went through some of this, I showed our wire report. And the concept there was utilizing the run schedule and then pushing the schedule to a data table. Got a couple of them in here. Let me just delete those out. So basically by pushing my my run schedule to a data table, which is this little button down here in the grid, I'm basically just taking all the data, sending it to, a giant lookup table. So for the wire report, we're using that to parse through the wire description and all that kind of stuff. So another kind of use case that I came up with was this run schedule typically indicates your equipment that's also modeled, your start or your finish. So I created a profile to kind of, what I wanted to do was evaluate my equipment from what's in the model to what I have in my schedule. So I come down here and just added a few parameters. Again, for those who maybe are newer with the profiles, the profile itself contains an element filter. The element filter defines what it is that you get. So this one's really simple. It's just equipment where my ID is not blank. And then down here, I'm defining what parameters I want to see. So the one that we want to look at here is what I'm labeling my model check. So I'm using PowerShell to basically take my equipment ID. I'm referencing a data table down here, which is that same wire fill table that I just sent out. And I'm basically looking for the finish or start column and trying to find a match with the equipment ID. So if I find a match, I know that that equipment is modeled because it's in my model with the same ID. If it's not, if I have a piece of equipment that's not in that schedule, then I'm going to know that it's just an unknown piece of equipment. So it might be the schedule's missing something. So what this looks like is if I open up this find elements feature, and let me refresh this, I'll do my equipment check, hit a refresh. You'll see my model check column here is saying scheduled, and then some of these are not scheduled. I also just displayed my submittal status, which is the same checkbox that is in all the equipment as well. So again, it's not earth shattering, but it's another use case of how you can kind of compile these tools and take advantage of the data that's in here and how you can take advantage of these searching tools and data profiles. Of course, I could grab a row, go and find it in the model in the back there. I pull this away and grab the element and look at it. I see a question. In my foresight, I only see a design module. Where's the admin module? Okay, so just backing up to answer the question, admin module is only visible to the company admin themselves. So depending on who your company admin is and how they invited company members would determine who actually sees this. Basically, under company properties, under the admin tab, this is where your company could add you as an admin if they needed to. Otherwise, it's only the admin themselves that would have access to this and that could download this. We don't really have very many permission levels in here. Really, it's just admin and non-admin. So this was just kind of a way to kind of layer this as a permissions, just so not everybody has access to it if a company didn't want their people accessing certain things. So to answer the question, you don't see this, you're not an admin, contact your company admin, and they can either download it for you or add you to that. Okay, so sticking on this same topic, kind of with the data profiles, I want to look at a couple of reports here. Might have shown some of these before, but we made quite a few enhancements. So I'm going to start with the trapeze report here. I'm going to go ahead and print this. So one of the improvements to all the reports that we're shipping out with are improved filters and grouping options. So I'll show the BOM as well. You'll see it there. But the idea of being able to sort or filter through locations, spools, categories, subcategories, we tried to expand as much as we could on that. So it gives you the most flexibility to refine the report itself and to control the data that's coming in or out. One thing to note that if I back up here, the reports are really being driven by profiles themselves. Some of these you really probably don't want to necessarily mess with because they're such specific reports, like a trapeze report, unless you kind of know what you're doing here. But something like a BOM, if I open up the BOM, let's just say you're modeling something and there's stuff showing up on the BOM that you want that you don't want in there, or stuff that's not showing up that you modeled that you think should be there. If by using these filters here, it doesn't work for you, let's just say, I don't know, I didn't want any cable tray showing up in here. So I'm getting all this cable tray, but I just don't even want to see it ever in my BOM. What you're going to do is modify the profile itself here to filter out those things. So something simple like a BOM, you could easily go to your profile, find that EV BOM, go to your element filter, and simply just uncheck a category as a whole. Or again, you could refine the filtering here to add things or remove things. So we did have I think someone came in from the mechanical side that pointed out there was a kind of a double dip on the filtering. So we've corrected that. So now the profile, the main profile, I'll call it, that's pulling in the elements is really controlling what you see. So going back to the trapeze report, one of the things we've added here is tags and catalog number. So I showed in the past the ability to use parameter sync to generate a catalog number, and I'll kind of show this again as a concept. But I displayed it in here as well. So what's kind of nice with some of these filters is we're calling this portion kind of your build details, right? It gives you all your A, B, C dimensions and similar to the Revit schedule. Well, oftentimes if you're using a catalog number, which is like displayed down there as an example, you don't really need any of this information. Most of it's just double dipped. The catalog number should replace these options. So by hiding the details, now you're just seeing quantities, tags, your catalog numbers. So it really simplifies the report. I mean, you can get rid of a lot of these charts, clean it right up. Don't even need to show the image. And it really just cleans up the report itself. So again, just not everybody wants just to see that. Some people want the details, and maybe there's a mix of reasons why you need both at times. So again, we're trying to really expand on these options here and build these out. So there's very little modification that you'd really need. And you can use these out of the box. So it's just staying on this topic with the trapeze. I'm going to jump over to tagging in the category, the catalog number as well, just to show some examples here. So another aspect of the sample model is there's going to be a lot of categorized views and things like that. It's going to help kind of jump around to different parts of the model and see different things in place. So if I jump over to my hanger view, you'll see I actually have an isolated down to hangers. I have my hangers all tagged with labels. And so on this tagging option, I want to jump to our renumbering tool, and we have some enhancements here. So I'll open up the settings. So the big enhancements to renumbering is this common numbering aspect. So Mechanical had an aspect to use ITM settings for common numbering. What we've introduced is the ability to use parameters and, again, PowerShell, potentially to do common numbering. So I have a couple of use cases for this, but we'll stick with hangers right now as an example. So again, element filter, everything always starts with an element filter, or most things do. So familiarize yourself with this tool. Very simple, conduit fittings, subcategory contains trapeze. You can set your prefix, your starting number, your right to parameter. So I'm using evolve custom ID. And then I'm using a parameter to, well, first I'm going to enable my common numbering, and I'm going to use my configuration ID. So the configuration ID is a parameter that we populate, and that's how we control or identify common trapeze hangers. So you'll notice this in our schedule, why trapeze hangers group together. They group by this parameter, and this parameter, or evolve in the background, evaluates the configuration of the trapeze itself to identify, is it the same as trapeze A and trapeze B? Are they the same? So just to kind of, I'll show kind of what this does, but just to clarify on common numbering, what we're saying here is we don't want unique numbers for all elements. We want like elements to have the same number. So what this looks like, I'm not going to rerun it because it's already done here. But when I'm looking at my trapeze, you'll see H6, 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 H10, 10, 10. These are all the same trapeze. So now from a fabrication point of view, when I'm looking at my report, I'm saying, okay, how many of these H10s do I have? What are they? And then H10 is essentially the label for the field. So when they receive it, they're looking for H10 and not some catalog number like this, right? So again, common numbering, like elements get the same number. So if you wanted everything to have a unique number, then you would just not enable that. Just sticking with the renumbering topic here, just want to point out a couple things. For prefixes and suffixes, you can utilize parameters to identify things. So an example that I used was for conduit bends. I gave it a standard prefix of CB, but then I'm mixing in the run ID as well, so that the actual number contains the run ID to the conduit itself. So in this case, I'm not using common numbering because I'm giving every conduit bend a unique number. The other one I'll point out is the use of PowerShell. So why I love using PowerShell, I think it's a great tool when needed. So it can solve a lot of problems. I came up with a basic concept here of something you could use it for. I don't know necessarily if this is something you would do, but basically the example would be, I'm going to evaluate the length of conduit. If it's greater than or equal to 10, I'm just going to return a valid value, full length for the purpose of this. And if it returns a null, which is basically just not this, then it's going to get a unique number. So to try to clarify that, so for this rule, any conduit that is greater than or equal to 10, I want to have the common number. Anything that is not greater than or equal to 10, I want to have a unique number. So what that would look like, let me go to a working view here just to give an example. So let me just draw a couple of conduits here. And I'll set 2 of these to 10 feet. So I got 5 conduits, 2 of them are 10 feet. I'm going to come through here, make sure my rule is turned on. They all are. Great. Renumber, oops, grab my conduits. Oh, that's just the tag option I have set on accident. And so what you'll see is 33, 34, 35, 34 again, 36. So this one and this one, which are both 10 feet, have the same number. What language does PowerShell use? I don't know. I'd say PowerShell language. I'm assuming the question is like, am I using C# or something, some programming language? If I believe it's its own syntaxes that you need to use for PowerShell. I'll have to clarify if there is some other reference, but I don't think it's not like C#, I guess, is the answer, something like that. I think it's its own thing. On that note, for anybody that kind of wants to start diving into this, if you go to our help docs, start typing in PowerShell, there's a page here, PowerShell commands for everyday usage. This is an ongoing document that gives you a lot of syntaxes and things like that. We're going to try to keep adding to this and giving examples, but again, the sample model here has a bunch of PowerShell scripts throughout it as examples. For the conduit bends with conduit ID, can you restart to count 1 if you're renumbering another run? Oh, okay. So the question is my starting value. Basically, you want the starting value to always be 1 if it's unique. I don't think we're going to be able to do that today, but I can see how that would be useful. All right, so moving on. So jumping back to the trapeze again, since kind of talking about PowerShell and dealing with those hangers, I'll kind of show that PowerShell script here that we're using. So this is actually, I believe, in the sample model that's there today. I think I've done a few tweaks to it. I saw some things I didn't like, but the script itself, it's generating catalog number that's probably not going to be good enough out of the box for anybody. To me, it's missing some detail. I did not cover every possible configuration that those trapeze can do. In my opinion, I would only make a catalog number for the types of hangers that I make 80% of the time. Anything that falls out of that range to me would be a custom drawing, do something like that, handle it outside of a standard. So I don't think it would be useful to do every possible combination, but it depends on what your standards are. So really the makeup of this script, it's grabbing 3 parameters. I'm looking at my strut length, my rod length 1, my rod length 3. So then the next chunk is basically evaluating my multiple tiers and returning my nomenclatures. So to start, how many tiers is it? So I'm doing a 1T, 2T, 3T, etc. Then we go tier by tier and we identify strut type. And I'm just giving an A, B, C, D nomenclature based on strut size and type. Then I get down to the bottom here and I'm evaluating hardware. There's a 1/4-inch hardware option on trapeze, so I didn't include that. So I'm just limiting certain things as if I don't know how many people use 1/4-inch rod on a trapeze, but it does it. In this case, I'm not considering it. The last part, the return here, this is where I really configure my catalog number itself. So you can really just follow through each piece of this to see kind of how this is put together. So this is something that I do have on auto update. So as you're modeling, they would get generated. You could certainly just push this to a manual only so that you can refresh your model when you need to. Depending on how many scripts and sync rules and all these things that you're running, it will cause performance impact depending on how complex everything is. So be considerate of that. And the way I would put it is if you don't need it, if you don't need to know the information right as you're modeling, don't set it to auto update. Large models especially, I wouldn't do it. A lot of these things you can run post modeling in a different function. So just keep that in consideration when building these. But jumping back to the report, you can kind of see, hopefully everything makes sense here. So let me hide my details, hide my images. So there's my catalog number 1TA 12 3/8 36 36. So it's a 12-inch trapeze 36 36 rod. You'll see we're working on a little nomenclature example of that. One of the nice things that we've also improved with these are the images themselves are referencing an image file. So I'm going to jump to kind of another report here, which is our in-wall rough report. We're still working on this as well, but this is a pretty cool one. So you have kind of 4 different options as reports here. So this would give me, my entire BOM for my in-wall. So this is the element filter on here is isolating it to my in-wall family, the little auto routing box family that we ship. So it's only grabbing that material. So I could easily say, I want a location. I won't do rooms. I'll show that in a second. I'll display my BOM and I'll group by locations and say, okay, area 2A, submit. I have that, right? I can show both areas, but keep it grouped by location. So area 2A, area 2B, gives me my full BOM. I can also break this down to assembly and I'll submit this. Now I'm seeing my D1, J, R1, whatever I name the assembly itself, and I'm seeing the bill of material by assembly here. This is where some images can come into play, and I'll submit this. So I'm getting an image here. What's cool about this here are these images are dynamic in the report, meaning if I go to my report image file, you'll see there's the D1, J, kit, R1, R2, whatever they are. Basically what will happen is if I make a new assembly in wall and I call this A5, all I need in this folder, in this file here, is an image called A5, and whatever that image is, it'll pull into the report. So that's what I mean by dynamic. It's whatever, we just put some, just some images there just for something as placeholders, but these images could be anything you want them to be. We also have doing like a cable, like a whip cut list here. So you can kind of get this all on one port, or just kind of say everything. You'll see this menu will just blow out. There's all kinds of options that you can choose from. Actually, let me go back to this and show one thing here. So let me do my, I'll do my BOM, I'll do my locations, and I'm going to enable room grouping. So you'll see my locations are area 2A, 2B, but my rooms, I have additional rooms. So in this example model, I'm using, I'll show it in the model, but I basically have multiple rooms per area. So when I submit this, I can get my area, my room number, and my BOM. So I'm utilizing our location feature as the location definition, and I'm using PowerShell to get my room number. So let me show what that looks like here. I go to my in-wall floor plan here. So here I just mocked up 2 areas. Again, these are my locations using Evolve locations. I got this as area 2A, area 2B. Each location has a couple of rooms. So when I click on one of these in-wall devices, I've added a project parameter called something down here, link room ID. And I'm using PowerShell here to grab the room number from the linked model. So I'll jump over to parameter sync. This would be certainly a more complex use of PowerShell. But again, the sample model has this example script to look at. So basically what we're doing is grabbing the linked model. We're using a bounding box of the element, finding its midpoint, and then scrubbing it for a room number, and then returning that room number value. So it's the main point here is there's just a lot you can do with this feature. I think this is an applicable use case. This is something that I probably would not put on any update. I'll show you what it, I'll just create a similar one. So yeah, that's pretty fast. Let me see if it's on. Yeah, it's not on, that's why. I'm probably, when we attach this linked model, I'm probably going to shut like everything off, because if you have every single thing on, when you go to use this model, it'll be a little overkill. But if I bump this here, I should get my room number. If I bring this over to here, 202, not too much of a processing. I probably had a couple of other things running at the time. So it's not too big of a deal, but this is a really small model. And again, I don't consider myself, as I'm doing this, needing to know the room number right away. I would think of this as something when you're going to process the BOM or something, that's when you want to sync the model and get all that data in alignment. Okay, so that covers those couple reports. We touched on a few other things. Let me just look back on my notes here. Let's see. I think that'll cover it for the reports. You'll see there's a lot more in here. We try to replicate a lot of the schedules that we shipped out of the box and mirror them as reports themselves. So that's why you see a bunch of these and what they are. All right, so I'll stop at the reports there. The next thing I want to show is our export utility. So this feature is designed to solve the problem of when you have to export multiple views and or sheets, usually on a daily, weekly basis. So the idea behind it is to create, I'll call it like a rule set to define those views and sheets at one time and export those out with a click of a button. 1 second. So at this main window, we have our source. So this is where you're defining what exactly you want to export. So let's just say today I need to export, these 2 sheets and these 3 views. Tomorrow it's going to be something else. So this grid gives you kind of an on-demand ability to grab what you need and select it. So it's basically check the box, that's what you get. Easy. I mean, you have our grid, you have the grid functionality of sorting and grouping and things like that. So obviously large models, you got tons of views. There are tools you can utilize to search through that. Now, in the case that you have common views or sheets that you are routinely exporting out, you wanted to use, surprise, surprise, element filter. Now, this is not, what's nice about this method is I don't need to have all the views or sheets created in order to make this rule. This could be a standard setting at the project level that you make in the beginning, and it's dynamic in the sense that you set your element filters to grab views or sheets by name or some parameter. So I have 2 examples here. This one should be called views, so I can see it properly. So this one's views, and what I'm doing is saying view name contains the word export. So again, this could be a really large job, and I'm not going to make all my export views today. I'll just make them as I need them, whatever. But by adding the word export to a view, it knows to grab that view. So my other one here will be sheets. So I would rename that to sheets. And basically I'm grabbing 2 categories, 2 parameters. So in this model, I create a project parameter called browser category, and I'm grabbing field and shop. So let me close out of this just so I can show you what we're here and why I'm doing that. So I created actually 3 categories of sheets just for the sake of having, multiple more than 2. So on my export utility, if I jump back to this element filter, I'm grabbing 2 of the 3 categories, field, shop. So with that element filter, with those element filters enabled, that's going to grab anything that meets those criteria when we get to the next step. You don't need, by enabling these, they're activated. So if today I have to export whatever this says, I can run it, that's fine. If tomorrow I just need these 5 views, I may want to make sure I disable those element filters so I just get the views I'm selecting. Or you can certainly mix them and you'll get both. But just be aware of it's grabbing whatever is enabled and checked between these 2. So from here, I'm going to go to my next tab, which is my destination. So I'm going to define 2 things. I'm going to define my file naming convention, and I'm going to define where it is these things go. File naming, very straightforward. You can use parameters to name these things. This is going to be pretty much typical of how Revit defaults these types of views anyway. You can also append date and file name, date and time stamps to the files as well. Then we get down to the location piece. So I did a couple little things here to kind of mix this up. You'll notice that my location is my temp folder. So this goes back to our sample file and why we extract it to, C drive, temp, evolve. Because what we did is we also added a blank export folder that has a couple of other subfolders in it, just to mock up a job folder of some kind, some folder structure. So again, out of the box, this model, you can use this tool and do this export and it'll work because this file path will exist. But basically what I have here are my views, and I'm sending them in 2 different formats, DWG, NWC, and I'm sending them to my views folder. So those are very straightforward. The next one are what I call my sheets. But what I want to do is send my field sheets to field and my shop sheets to shop. So the way I do this is through another element filter. So the element filter is essentially the same thing it was back in the source tab, except I'm only specifying one category per row. So this one is field, the next one is shop. So just to make sure it's clear, my source tab here is defining all of the stuff that I need to grab. And then my destination tab is kind of parsing this out where I want it to go. So the use of another element filter is basically my ability to grab, these two to go one place and this chunk to go another place. So it may seem redundant of why we have two element filters, but they're being utilized to do two different things. Once I've done this, it's really all you have to do to set it up. Again, this is a project level function. You can make a standard for this. Your folder structure obviously would change probably by job, but essentially you could keep this all, export this as a setting, and keep it by project by project. The next tab here is a preview. So this is just kind of making sure you're getting the views and sheets that you wanted. Because again, I'm using an element filter, so I don't necessarily know at the time what views and sheets would exist. So this gives me the ability to look at it. I can see my output name here with my date time or my date stamp on the end. And then the last tab are my options. So these are going to be your typical Revit options that they gave us through the API. So it pretty much mirrors what you have in native Revit. Also note that the PDF tab here is not available for 20 and 21. In Revit 2022, there's a built-in driver that we can access to create PDFs. Here, we would have to make our own, so we didn't have time. So we're just not supporting it for these two versions right now. But yeah, so once this is set up and configured, it's just a run of the button. I'm not going to do it just for the sake of time. It'll take a couple minutes to export these files. I probably have done it. Yeah. So you'll see the files come in. I did it yesterday. If I come into my views, you'll see my NWC and my DWG files. So that's basically what it would look like. So once it's configured, every week what you're doing is coming into this utility, clicking the button. Once it's set up and it's good, it's just a click of the button and it runs. All right, so that's the export utility there. Another small enhancement, I'll go through a couple of small things that we have done in here. So we have this find elements utility. We created a kind of a, I'll call it a manager version of it. So inside of applicable managers like Prefab Manager, let me open up a 3D view. So I actually have something I can access here. Inside Prefab Manager, you'll have the little magnifying glass icon. So this allows you to grab a spool, click the button, brings you to it, highlights it. Same with points. You have the ability to grab a point or multiple points from within the manager view. So it's just a nice quick tool that you'll see there. I made a comment on the export utility about exporting out the config. One thing you'll notice when you're in some of these tools is we've enhanced the exporting importing function, which we're calling a configuration exchange. So you can take parameter sync as an example. There are PowerShell scripts in here that may reference data tables. Reports is actually a really good one because I'm dealing with multiple profiles and data tables. And the problem with the previous tool, the way it was, is it really required you to export the different things all out separately, and you had to make sure you brought them all in. What the tool does now is allows you to grab chunks of things. So let's say if I grab my trapeze report, my wire fill. Where is it? Oh, look at my reports. If I go to my wire fill report, you'll see my data table automatically is checked here because it's dependent with that report, right? Along with the profile that's part of it. So you can certainly choose to uncheck those, but it's just a nice way. You'll see I get my trapeze profiles. It's a nice way to kind of just take everything as a whole, export it out, and bring it all in as one kind of unified thing. So it just really help getting configurations in and out of your model. All right. Jumping around a little bit on another small enhancement to family browser. We now have a load favorites button. So you can make favorites by clicking the little stars on the icons, and then you can use load favorites to load them as a whole. So probably useful start of a project, bring in your bins, bring in some boxes that the half a dozen families you always use every project, tag them as favorites, start a new project, load them in all at once, so you're not searching through the browser to find them. All right, another tool that I will enhancement that I'll show. Let me go to let's just go to a floor plan view here. I use one of these conduits as an example. So our place sleeve tool here now has an option to not require a host to place sleeves. So think of this if you have DWG background, so you have no wall, and you don't want to draw a wall in your model. This allows you to basically define a sleeve and pick it by wherever you click your mouse. So when I enable this option, I just have to define my sleeve. This is going to change a little bit. We're going to simplify this a little bit and not have two length fields, but it's just a slight change we're going to make before we ship it. But anyway, check in the box, do not require a host. I have to define my length because the tool before calculates length based on wall thickness. Obviously, there's no wall, so I have to say what it is. And then once I hit OK, it's basically wherever I am along the run. I click, now I have a sleeve. So small little enhancement, but again, I think it's pretty useful there. Let's see. The couplings tool now has a remove function, change direction, entire path. So a quick way to remove couplings from a run. Let's see. Oh, well, one other small little enhancement here, but a good one. Inside of our SmartBend settings, there's now a refresh function. So the use case for this would be you're changing out a bender, you modified a bender spec, you modified some of the numbers here. This gives you the option to refresh the bend families, by view or by project, and it'll refresh the bend information. So it's a quick way to do that if you make changes. Let's see, there's a couple. Does the point manager allow for the exporting of survey points? No, I'm assuming you're referring to a Revit survey point, and let me go here. So the origin can reference a Revit survey point, but if you're saying to export the survey point itself, we're not doing that. So hopefully that answers the question. For the hangar configuration ID, if you modify an existing hangar, will it generate a new configuration ID or change? Will it generate a new configuration ID or change the config ID? Well, well, I'm not sure if I know exactly what the question is, but I'll show you what it does here. So if I add a hanger here, let me just make sure my sync rule is on. Yep, it's on. So you can see the properties. Probably not going to see this because I got to scroll up. But so the sync rule is going to update the existing config ID as, so this is on auto update. So as I change it, it's going to change. So if I take this and make it, you know, a 5-foot trapeze, that's going to trigger the catalog number to change because my sync rule is on auto update. So there's my 60-inch value. The 36 is the rod elevation. So if I bumped up a rod length there, I'm going to see that change. Oh, there we go. I don't know why that didn't affect it, but I'll see the rod change there. So hopefully that answers that question. So it generates, I guess, a new config is the answer. Okay, so moving on, jumping over to points. So common thing that we saw people doing, let me go to a point view here, was creating their own point types, which is not an issue. I could come in here, let me take a layout point, duplicate it, and say, you know, Adams point. No problems with doing this. We've always supported that. We can read the point. You can come in here and place it. The problem is it's not numbered, so you got to number it through the point manager. So what we have done for the point tools are made them dynamic, so they will actually display whatever point types, family types are in the model. So now it allows me to click this, set my numbering, use the point itself, and it auto numbers it. And I got my Adams point. This also comes into play when you're doing import points. So if I was going to import points, I could come in here and say, make an imported point family type if I wanted that. And I could use that as the type that I import. So here's that. Let's see. I'll try to get another minute or so. I guess the last one to just look at here is, on the points tool, just to make a comment, previously you had to have all your error conditions straightened out. You could not have an error condition to export a point, but now you can come in here, as long as the point you're selecting does not have an error condition, you can come in here and export the file out and send it, no problem. So it basically allows you to keep error conditions in your model, and you only have to resolve them when you need to export them. So just worth mentioning that as well. So sheet creation has a few different improvements. I probably won't show them all, but I will just kind of talk about them. The big one I think is that you'll see is within the title blocks, we're using just a single family now. We used to have a different view window family, one for spools, one for regular Revit views. Now it's just one family. Let me just move this thing up here so you can see it. So it's one family. It's the same options that you're used to before, but it's going to have basically your regular views, regular view options here, and your assembly views down here. So assembly views for spooling. The content team has also added some visual indicators. One, it's going to have some nomenclature or some wording on there that tells you either what you're making or if it's in an error condition. This one's saying it's place on sheet is not selected. So I'm going to know that Revit's going to create, their Evolve's going to create this, but it's not going to put it on my sheet. And this is just turned off for this condition, for this example title block. The other thing I could do is if I have too many boxes checked here. Oh, what? Yep, there we go. I don't know why that didn't come in. Oh, because it's a schedule. If you have too many boxes or conflicting boxes, it's going to put it into an error condition. Again, make a big red X just to bring your attention to it. So small little family enhancement, but it should hopefully give some more visual indicators that what you have configured and if anything is not right or doesn't look right. A couple other things to note as enhancements is the detail number can be defined. So if you always name this one 1, this one 2, this one 3, you can specify that there, and that's how they would be numbered when they get created. The other option is scale to fit. So you can turn that on or off. This is going to be applicable to most views, but in the locations tool, there's an option in there in the settings to scale to fit. So that's currently going to override this. So we're bringing a lot of those options together. So this will probably get updated in the future, but now at least you have the option to turn that on and off. The other thing is we support elevation views. So just a quick use case for that in the sample model was I took an electrical room, made that into a location, and I can generate a sheet that has basically a plan view, 3D view, and then my 4 walls on a sheet as elevation views. So those are the few enhancements we made with sheet creation. I think I'll end it there. There's a few more things, some fixes we put in here, a few more little enhancements, but I'll end it there since we're approaching time. If there are any other questions, feel free to post those in now, and I'll give it a couple minutes. The release itself hopefully can come out before the end of the year. If it goes too far, it probably will be the first of the new year. We've identified some small bugs that we're fixing, also getting customer feedback that it's in beta. So I don't want to release it too close to the holiday week because nobody's going to use it and nobody's around to answer any support calls. So we'll see. I'm not 100% sure if it'll be this year or early next year. Is there a way to generate locations based on Revit rooms? And that's a good question. There is not, well, no, we do not provide a way to generate locations by room, but that is a good idea. And we are going to look into that, how to utilize that. I believe we are recording this. Here, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Marina, I believe we are recording this, right?
We absolutely are recording this and we'll send it out to everyone who is registered. So thank you everyone for attending today. We really appreciate your engagement. Make sure to sign up for next month's as well. Even if you can't make it at the time we have it, we'll at least follow up with the recording for you. And next month, we'll be going back to our regularly scheduled time at the last Thursday of the month at 2 p.m. I see we have a few lingering questions here, so I'll make sure we get those over to Adam and we will follow up with you. Thank you so much, everybody who joined today, and have a wonderful holiday time. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.